Welcome to episode 150 of In Touch with iOS, a podcast that talks about iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and related technologies. I am your host, Dave Ginsburg. My co-host, Warren Sklar, is off tonight, but we have two great guests this week. My first guest is the tech-savvy lawyer, Michael Eisenberg. How are you doing, Michael?
Hey, sir. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to have you back. And we're going to definitely talk to you a little bit about some legal things that are going on with Apple here in just a bit. But also to join the show this week, and we just have him back every week, it seems like. Mr. Jeff Gamet's back. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing well. Thanks for inviting me back yet again.
Yes. I appreciate you coming on. And I think we've got quite a bit to talk about this week with Apple, as it seems like we always do as of late. So we've got some news. We'll talk about beta, that just some changes this week. We are going to touch upon the Epic versus Apple legal stuff that's going on, and a number of other things here. So we got some good topics to talk about this week with everybody, but let's just go ahead and dive right in, and let's jump onto the news here for this week. First story we have is out in Mac Rumors. AirTags used successfully to track a mailed package across the UK. Thought this was interesting. An Apple customer in the United Kingdom has successfully used Apple's Find My network to track an AirTag as it was being sent by mail to a friend in a completely different city. They outlined this in a blog post, this was Kirk McInerney. We know him. He does a lot of stuff, right, Jeff, with iTunes and music and such. He decided to tape an AirTag to a piece of card, wrapped it inside a small bubble envelope, and then sent it on its way. He lives in a small town called Stratford upon Avon, and he shipped his AirTag to a friend near London, and he used the Find My app and on his iPhone, and sure enough, he was able to keep track of it the whole time. So I think that's has come in real handy. Michael, have you purchased any AirTags yet? Have you even looked at those as of yet?
I haven't looked at them yet. I mean, I'm interested, but to be honest, I have a couple of tile trackers that I still need to activate.
Yeah.
But given COVID, quite frankly, it's like I don't go anywhere. I'm either in my office in the house or I'm downstairs in the house. And given the recent gas price hike that we're having here in the Southeast, which includes Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C.,
yes.
I'm thankful that I have a full tank of gas. And since I haven't traveled anywhere really far, I'm not worried for the next several months about filling that tank up.
Yeah. And Jeff, obviously, we've had lots of discussions about AirTags. I thought this was kind of a unique way of testing its abilities. Didn't you think?
Yes. And honestly, for me, it wasn't a matter of, holy crap, someone did this. It was, how long is it going to take before someone mails an AirTag and tracks it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And now we know. Just a couple of weeks.
It works. They were able to track it from point A to point B.
Well, one thing I'd be curious about is whether or not that's actually technically legal, because you're not allowed to mail certain batteries and other sources of power without proper registration. And I know that the Tile has a battery in it. So I hope that person is considering possible legal ramifications if, from their experiment.
Well, this was in the UK, so we don't know. I'm not well versed on the laws of there. So, but,
my take on it is someone else did it, so I didn't have to. The legal ramifications no longer apply.
Like let them take it. Yeah, if something happens. So,
although I did mail a 4-pack of brand new AirTags to a friend just recently, and when I got to the post office. They said, are there any batteries in this? And I'm like, well, actually, yes. And so I showed him the AirTag that I had with me. And I said, there's 4 of these in here. Opened it up and went, this is the battery. There's 4 of these. And he's like, oh, whatever. And,
those are
and that was the end of that.
2032 batteries. Yeah. Excellent. And then next story here on Mac Rumors as well is the Find My network was exploited to send messages. Security researcher had found a way to leverage Apple's Find My network to function as a generic data transfer mechanism, allowing non-internet connected devices to upload arbitrary data by using nearby Apple devices to upload the data to them. The Find My network uses an entire base of active iOS devices and acts as a node to transfer location data. When he explained this in a blog post, and they have a diagram in here that actually shows how the data flow works. So I just found this interesting to see that already the people are attempting to exploit the Find My network, which I'm not at all surprised. What's your take on this, Jeff?
I'm not surprised either. And from what I've read, it doesn't look like they can do anything malicious with this yet. Like they can't inject malicious code. But it's definitely a clever way to transmit messages without other people knowing.
Oh yeah, for sure, which is a little scary. So
yeah.
Any thoughts on this, Michael?
Well, it just kind of dawned on me that we're going to be talking about the Apple versus Epic fight. And you got to wonder if other third-party companies or the third-party trackers are going to want to use the Find My iPhone system, and if there's going to be a cost to that, and if Apple is going to even let them.
I can fill you in on that.
Yeah, because there was a story. I was hoping you were going to bring that up, Jeff.
So the Find My network for third-party trackers is totally available for all those companies to use.
Even Tile.
Yeah, even Tile can use it if they.
Oh wow! So, I didn't know that.
If they want, if they choose, but they're unhappy right now.
Yeah, they're unhappy right now, and I can see why. Now, there's a limitation though. If you're going to make a tracker device that uses the Find My system, then it needs to be locked down so exclusive to that. Which there are two logic paths that go along with it. One is it allows Apple to help avoid potential exploits of their tracking system, and then the other part is, well, hey, now you're locked into the Apple system. So if Tile were to support the Find My network, they would have to make a separate Tile tracker that supported just Find My and not their own tracking platform.
Right. But the one thing I didn't hear you say, Jeff, is how much is it going to cost?
Apple is not charging a fee for companies.
They're not.
Yeah, wow, and that's the interesting thing with it, because everybody thinks monopoly. Apple is not going to allow any third party to jump in. We want our AirTags to be exclusive. Well, it's not. I mean, and like I said, we'll be talking about this with Epic in just a minute here, about that stuff, the Apple opening things up and being reasonable. Here's another example of it when it comes to the Find My network. They've already got devices already on the Find My already. Belkin's got earphones, and there's other number of different devices already that are joining on to the Find My network, which is awesome, because why do I want to be going into different places when I can go to one place to look for all my devices right through their network? So it's pretty cool.
Of course. Yeah, that's exactly what Apple wants. And it just so happens that it also works out to be a nice and convenient thing for us too. So, it's like a win all the way around.
Very much so. The next story, and this is a story of, I'm not surprised it's already happened here, is Mac Rumors testing out a 3D printed AirTag compatible Apple TV remote case. Early this week, they shared a 3D printed Apple TV remote case that is designed to house an AirTag, adding much needed Find My functionality to the Siri remote that we could never find because it falls between the cushion, and they wanted to check it out. Interesting. It was an Etsy seller that who designed the case, sells it for $12.99 US. But of course, you got to have that 3D printer to take advantage of being able to print that. And there's a spot that they show a picture and a video in this story to show you where the AirTag will go, and it fits right into the case, and you can find it. Jeff, we've talked about the Apple TV a number of times, and the remote. I did order the new Siri remote that's coming. We'll see because I want to know. I like to see how that is, because we were pretty excited about it. So we'll be reviewing that when it comes out. But what do you think? This is. I would think people are going to start printing them and actually selling them, and not have to have a 3D printer.
Of course, they're going to do that. But I'd like to remind people that if you have a 3D printer file that you want to print, check and see if your local makerspace is currently open. Because if it is, you can go in and print your 3D case. Okay,
and they just charge you any for the supplies, or?
It depends. Some of them are fully funded, through grants and donations, and others you have to pay for materials.
Okay. I'm sure you haven't done much with Michael with 3D printing. I haven't either.
No, I haven't. But I have a feeling that if I want to find a Surrey remote with a AirTag, I could just go on Amazon and type that in and come up with a dozen.
Someone might come up with them.
Yeah. Someone's going to sell it.
Yeah, they already got third-party AirTag cases. I haven't put it in. I haven't put in my AirTag yet, but in this part of my 4-pack. But there's going to be third-party stuff everywhere.
Well, wait. Did you go with Apple's case, or did you go with a third-party case?
I bought the Belkin on my keys. I don't have them here, but my key chain that holds this. This is the AirTag. Is made by Belkin, and it was like $12.95. Apple was selling it, so I went with that one for my keys. And then you could buy. There's a ton of third parties, but I keep going on Amazon looking at the third party cases for the AirTags, and none of them have in stock for like a month. I mean, it's.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you saw that, Jeff, but
I think for a lot of the companies, it's because they needed Apple to announce the AirTag so they could actually get the specs
and start production.
So then they're like, okay, this is what we're selling. And then they're doing like this, and someone start actually making it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think that has a lot to do with the delays.
Speaking of what we just talked about, I forgot I had this article here, is Chipolo, the One Spot, is now available for to pre-order as a cheaper AirTag alternative with Find My integration. And as we just talked about, Apple opened up the Find My app to third-party devices. Chipolo is one of the first brands to offer this functionality with a new one-spot item tracker. Looks slightly bigger from the picture here, but the price is set at $28 individually or $90 for a 4-pack, so you're about $10 less than what Apple's charging for their 4. And as with the AirTag, you can attach it to a Chipolo One Spot for the keys, a wallet, the backpack, all that stuff. And that was the thing too, is people want to be able to put it in their wallet and put it in other places. So there you go. We already have the first third-party AirTag competitor that Apple is opening that up to. So,
and it has a hole in it, so you can just throw it on your key.
Yeah, it has a hole. Look at that. You don't have to have a case for it in the picture. So it's good stuff. So I think we pretty much have covered that, unless you guys had anything else about this. All right. And then the other thing I want to talk about, actually, I'll bring this down to our discussion about the iPad in just a moment here. So we'll talk about it in a bit. This was interesting. Mac rumors, Apple is going to be merging the iCloud's documents and data service with iCloud Drive, about time, in May of 2022. Apple plans to merge the iCloud documents and data service with iCloud Drive starting in May of 2022, is according to a support document that was published last week from Apple. iCloud Drive and iCloud documents and data share the fundamental ability to back up data from apps. However, iCloud documents and data was offering a cumbersome, confusing experience. In contrast, iCloud Drive is more unified, with users able to access their files and content through the Files app and throughout their devices. So they're saying starting next year, a year from now, the iCloud documents and data will have their accounts automatically migrated to iCloud Drive. But you do have to make sure you have iCloud Drive enabled, because if you don't, you're not going to you'll end up stopping using it. So, Jeff, what do you think? This is about time, I think, like I said.
It is. The bigger news for me out of this was that iCloud documents and data was actually still a thing. Seriously, yeah. I thought it had already been shut down a long time ago.
I forgot about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I mean, I use iCloud Drive all the time. Like all the video stuff that I record on my computer goes into iCloud Drive, and then I pull it up on my iPad where I do my editing, and it's just seamless.
Absolutely. You use iCloud Drive, Michael, I'm assuming?
I do, but only for my personal stuff. I'm a little bit more lazy in the sense that I just haven't figured out something else. If I wanted to use something else other than iCloud Drive to back up my personal stuff. On the other hand, I've been a fan of Dropbox when it comes to my business. And quite frankly, as they're issuing out a new service in 2022, I would be hesitant to want to back up my legal law practice with iCloud until like a lot of the bells and kinks are kicked out. But even then, that would take like several years. And as Dropbox has been working for 15 plus years, I have no plans on changing anything.
Yeah. If I were you, I'd be the same way. If I have any business for that matter, I'm back in places, up into different places across the board here, including I use iDrive. That's but my primary backup as of late. OneDrive. I do some Dropbox backups, but iDrive has been my primary of backing up all my computers and all my data. And again, you got photo backups as too. Of course, Google Photos is going to be shutting down or removing storage here very shortly. I know that as well. So, but it's good to see that Apple is finally going to get rid of that, which, like I said, we didn't even know it still existed. And iCloud Drive hopefully becomes more of a robust way of getting to your files where it hadn't been in the past. So,
you see the price structure with that, the new price structure.
Oh, for iCloud.
Mm-hmm. In 2022.
Did they mention that? No, I didn't see that.
I did.
No, I don't.
I didn't know they were changing pricing structures.
Yeah, I don't think they are. I mean,
I thought they were just shutting down the old legacy.
This is just data. Yeah, this is just a legacy cloud data and documents. That this was a legacy service that they hadn't shut down and moving it over just to iCloud Drive instead of.
But I have a feeling something new is going to pop out in 2022.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And there's going to be a whole new pricing structure because people aren't exactly thrilled with it because you have to make a huge jump from one to the other. But
we'll talk about the Apple One bundle here just a bit because we have some. They finally fixed some issues here, and we'll touch on that a little bit. And then the last story I had here was 2 months after this is on the Mac Observer. Our friend Charlotte Henry wrote this. The HomePod was discontinued. It still remains available to purchase. Apple announced, of course, the HomePod would be discontinued. This was back in March, as we record this a month ago, or 2 months ago now, and the company said that way back when at that time the HomePod Mini is going to be is a huge hit, and they're very happy with just to stick with that and discontinue the HomePod. Interesting to find that a lot of people are saying when they purchase these HomePods, this is stock of HomePods when it first came out, like 3 years ago. So kind of tells you that Apple had quite a warehouse full of them. They're still selling them, I would think. And we've talked about HomePod a bunch of times. Jeff, what do you think? I think this is why there's just still a warehouse full of them yet.
Yeah, I think we're down to just the whites, and the space grays are all gone. But still, I mean, the fact that people can get original HomePods that are from that first and second run is kind of telling. Yeah,
it's been sitting in the warehouse for a while, and it kind of tells you why they kind of discontinue it. Do you have a HomePod or a HomePod Mini, Michael?
I have both, and I mean clearly the HomePod sounds much better than the HomePod Mini. And there was a time when I was contemplating getting a second HomePod, but quite frankly, if they're discontinuing it, I don't see the need to jump and buy old hardware. It was on sale for $100, but they're not going to discount their stuff anytime soon.
I've got the HomePod Pair above me, and I do have some minis as well. And I'll hold off for the HomePod for now. It still works great.
And it'll continue to work for a long time.
Yeah. So, all right, so let's move on to our topics. When Warren is usually here, he's the one that lives on the edge and always has beta installed and has beta versions of iOS software. But let's just talk about this a little bit, see what's going on in the beta world. Apple just seeded the third version, the third beta of iOS 14.6, as well as iPadOS, and the public beta is also available. It appears to be just some more minor changes. They really haven't made a lot of changes, other than the fact that they are laying the groundwork for the Apple Card family feature that's going to be introduced. We'll talk about that in a bit here. It allows the spouses to share a single credit card, Apple Card account, each person as a co-owner to build credit. So we'll talk about that in just a bit. But it looks like, I'm not seeing anything too terribly exciting with beta this week. And it seems like it's been like that pretty much for a while, other than when 14.5 was it took almost 3 months to finally come out, which was crazy. And we've got links here in the show notes. The Watch OS 7.5 for the Apple Watch was also released. Don't see anything there. They aren't really aware of anything that's come out, and then tvOS never has anything true that has any fanfare. That's at 14.6 as well. One thing that was interesting is with iOS 14.6 beta is everybody has been complaining big time about the Apple Podcasts app. It has just been god awful horrible. I mean, I just stopped using it. And in fact, my wife started really getting into podcasts. I was kind of excited for her to finally start listening to podcasts, because she hadn't been. I've never remember listening to podcasts. She's into the Crime Junkies podcast, which is kind of neat. And she was using the Apple Podcast app. She kept complaining about it. I said, I need to move you over to Pocket Cast. You're going to be so much happier with that. So as soon as I did it, she's like, oh my God, this is so much better. So they did redesign the podcast library, so all the episodes of a show is now displayed by default, but it was no longer possible to delete or remove individual episodes, which is such a pain. I like doing that. I want to be able to go into my podcast app and I want to clean things out, and it just has gotten so horrible. But the thing is, this show, there's so many people who are listening to this show, and I know by the stats I look at every week, they listen to it using Apple Podcasts. So it's a relevant way of listening to podcasts these days. But I just, it's interesting to see where this is going to go, and I'm hoping Apple listens, because been a lot of disappointments and people complaining about it. So, any thoughts, Jeff?
I'm not surprised at the stats you're seeing, because it's the default app that comes on people's iPhones and iPads. Therefore, it's the app most people will use. It's unfortunate that it's become such a hot mess. Also, I have a podcast recommendation for your wife. Since she's getting into the crime stuff, tell her to check out My Favorite Murder.
Yeah, I think she was listening to that one too.
Good.
Yeah, that's a great podcast.
Wait, I gotta jump in with another podcast for your wife.
She's gonna like this.
I love Dateline, which is actually a podcast you can do. You can download episodes of Dateline, but that's actually not the one I'm going to recommend. The podcast is called Find Jody. It's about Jody. If you ask your wife about Jody Huisentruit, if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, this is a news reporter out in Minnesota that 25 years ago disappeared on her way to work, that her friends and colleagues have kept in the news all these years. I'm sure she has seen an episode or two in the past about Jody Huisentruit, and they just started this podcast this year that I really enjoy, as I've always I find crime and mystery, better than the news, because, the news is even worse, but we won't go there.
Oh, absolutely. I will add that. I'll definitely make sure she is made aware of it. So that's really the only other thing that stood out with the beta. That hopefully that's going to have some improvements. I haven't spent a lot of time as far as that goes with the Apple Podcast app. So, let's go on and move on to our first topic we wanted to hit is the fact that. The upcoming iPad Pro, which is going to be coming out, from an article we have in here in the show notes, it's going to start preparing to ship here pretty soon. Here, I did order the the 11-inch, the iPad Pro with the M1 processor. I currently have the 2018 version, which I'm trading in with Apple. Apple gave me a very generous amount to trade it in, so I'm not paying a huge amount for the new one. So it's pretty much like a equal trade, more or less, but I don't think it's going to be equal because it's going to be about 50% faster than the previous generation. We have an article here in show notes that I wanted to touch upon this a little bit from Mac Rumors. Really looking at the Geekbench of the Geekbench 5 average multi-core scores, and it's like right behind the M1 MacBook Air for performance. It's just crazy, and it blows. And it doesn't blow away, but it's faster than a Core i9 Intel MacBook Pro, and then of course 50% more than the iPad Pro I currently have now. That's the A12Z processor for that. So, but this will be interesting to see where that performance comes from, as far as whether is it the 12.9 going to be much faster than the 11-inch. I don't know. We aren't going to know until we get it in our hands and really get to see what's going on here. But the other thing too is the graphics performance is going to be up to about 71% from what they're saying, better, which is going to be phenomenal here. So, but Michael, you brought up you wanted to talk a bit about the file management, and are you currently using it in your practice, using an iPad for work?
I have an iPad Pro, and it's, I believe, the 2018 12.9. Yeah, and to be honest, I love the iPad. I love the iPad Pro. I like the size. I like the screen, and I like the snappiness. Now, I have noticed in the last week or two that it kind of started slowing down a little bit. So I don't know if that has to do specifically with the iOS or the horrible rumor that Apple sometimes slow down older machines in order for the release of new machines and or new iOS. But we won't go in that direction. Now, the thing is, I cannot use an iPad Pro to run my business. As much writing I do, as much like with my client relations management program, which syncs nicely with my main computer, my iMac. The problem is I cannot easily find, get, alter documents that I need that are in my Office files. And because of that, I can't go to a coffee shop and do some major work. I might be able to write a brief if I transfer the Word file into the right spot, or take care of some email. But it's because of the file management. It can never become a laptop for me to be on the road, or even a main computer in my office. And it's just frustrating. There's just simply no reason why that can't be more easily done without the frustrations and the tricks that you have to know in order to kind of make sure that everything is in sync.
Absolutely. And Jeff, we've talked about this before with the file management and what you're doing. You're doing a lot of your LumaFusion video editing on your iPad, right?
Right. The file management. I'm with you. Apple needs to find a more efficient way to let us access documents on our iPad. As far as syncing content goes, as long as I think about ahead of time how I'm going to use my documents, I can put them in the right places. But now we're going back to I need to plan ahead for where my documents go. So the other part of the problem that I'm seeing is that app developers aren't always coming up with good and robust ways for us to access the content we're working on. So, for example, I do a lot of writing on my iPad in Ulysses, and it has its own interface into file management. And so it becomes this transparent thing where I'm just working in Ulysses, I write, and when I get over to my Mac, I can open Ulysses on my Mac, and the exact same files are sitting in the exact same place in the interface, just waiting for me, which is great. And with LumaFusion, they make it easy for me to get into all of those online storage systems. so that I can put content in my Dropbox account or in my OneDrive or in iCloud or wherever I'm going to put it, and access without any problem. But there are a lot of apps that I use where it is really difficult to manage where those files are.
Now, admittedly, I've not played with it in a while, but for instance, for me, for like Microsoft Word or any PDF reader or PDF program that I want to use to manipulate and or read PDFs, it's just a nightmare. You've got to like find the file in the Finder or in Dropbox and open it up, and you have to save as a different document, and then you got to make sure you save it as and save it back to wherever you need it. And when I'm leaving my office to go wherever, I don't always know what I'm going to need. And it's always,
right.
Like another client could pop up, I'm going out for client A, but client X has this emergency. Well, I can't really necessarily take care of it or stumble around. That's why I do have parallel access. But even then, you're not always guaranteed internet connection or good internet connection. Right. Even if I have the cellular program, but that doesn't guarantee me anything.
Right, but it's all right there on your MacBook Pro or your iMac.
Right, and that's why I'm always taking my MacBook Pro. So
it totally makes sense.
MacBook Pro, and this has become more of a media consumption device, which I enjoy, and
sure.
very, very secondary for work.
Yeah, and my iPad my iPad Pro is very much a content creation device, but not to the level that I would like it to be, and that's simply because it's not as easy to manage my content on my iPad as it is on my Mac. And of course, there are other things like like a specific app that does a specific thing, and it's only on Mac OS, or like if you go to record a show, a podcast, well. Unless you're going to spend a lot of money to make everything come together, or just use a web service to do that,
right?
You're going to do it on your Mac. It's the iPad is just too limited.
But I will say in the iPad's defense that I do edit all of my podcasts with Ferrite on my iPad.
Ferrite.
Oh, no,
whether it's my finger,
totally
finger or a pencil. It's so intuitive that way, and the way my mind thinks that I can usually go through and edit a podcast and just have it come out.
Yeah, Ferrite is a killer app.
It is. I have it. I don't use it enough. I've been using GarageBand to edit this podcast for many years, and I need to explore it further. I really do.
But you have a system that works, and that's great. So it's GarageBand. Ferrite's
not always easy to get a
too.
file over there, but you have your workarounds, and because Ferrite is so intuitive and easy to use, it's worth the time.
Good stuff. So yeah, I'm definitely I'm getting pretty excited to get that new iPad. I held off and didn't get the 2020 as people know me. I do tend to buy the new versions of products pretty quickly. I avoided it this time with the iPad, so I held off a year, 2 years, and 3 years actually. And now I'm excited to see what the M1 has to offer when that arrives, and we're expecting that to arrive towards the end of the month as we record this in May here. So you'll definitely be hearing about it. So
awesome.
Let's go ahead and talk about. Since we have Michael here, I wanted to touch upon the Epic versus Apple trial that did begin this past week. A lot of things going on with it. And of course, everybody knows this is the trial about Fortnite, Epic Games versus Apple, having issues with the App Store and being removed from the being removed and all the other fun stuff. And it's not, Michael, you have been following this, and you have some views of this trial and what you think so far, where it's going, and what could the outcome be.
Yes, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to kind of like start a little bit from the beginning to make sure we have some very basic understanding, and I'm not trying to be pedantic to the listener, but I want to make sure that we all have at least a basic threshold to move forward. Now, before I even begin, and I apologize to Dave, Jeff, and your entire audience, I have to issue a caveat / warning. Yes, I am an attorney. Okay, I am going to be talking about legal things. I am not offering legal advice. This conversation is not creating an attorney-client relationship. My opinion is simply that, my opinion. It is not a professional analysis of this is what's going to happen. This is what I think may happen personally. I do encourage you to contact your own attorney if you need some help regarding an issue similar to this. That being said, the basic issue we're seeing here between Epic and Apple, which is also between Epic and Google, is that Epic doesn't want to pay the Apple Pay and the Google Pay store prices. They're getting about roughly 30% of their income, and they want to keep more of their money. We can all understand that. However, the question becomes whether Epic can claim and prove if Apple and Google have some sort of monopoly over this process, whether there's an antitrust violation going on. And that's where I want to start just briefly, not to bore everyone, with a little history about how everything's going into play. Number one, everyone's listening, wondering, well, how can the government even get involved with monopoly? Doesn't the corporations and business have the right to do basically what they want? Yes and no. The founders, back with the Constitution, have allowed Congress to, if you will, regulate interstate commerce. So when things cross the borders from one state to another, Congress can intervene if they think there's something wrong. They can regulate it. That being said, well, what's wrong if they have a monopoly? Back in the late 1800s, when interstate commerce was becoming a boom because of the trains, a lot of companies, the trains, the oil conglomerates, were creating these monopolies where it became anti-competitive for others to play on a fair playing field. That being said, the antitrust laws, the Sherman Act, came into effect so that Congress can regulate that. Does that mean because the company's a monopoly, can the government regulate? Not necessarily. So let's start focusing on Apple for a second. Apple has created this platform, the Apple OS, the Apple iOS, and they have ways of controlling it and regulating it to make sure that people who are on there are within the sandbox rules, and also, to be blunt, because they are developing this platform, they want to make sure they get paid for providing the platform. Now, the question becomes, well, is that a monopoly? If it's an innocent monopoly, in other words, this is part of the natural organic progression of a company that's continuing to grow, and it so happens that they have control over everything, that may be allowed. It wouldn't necessarily be allowed if they were the only company that allowed Epic Games to play on their device. There are other platforms, whether it's Nintendo, Android, PlayStation, and consumers have the ability to go onto other platforms. Similarly, like if the trains had a monopoly, the train company had a monopoly, and that they were the only train service that you could ride on across states, then the government may be able to intervene. However, if there are other train companies that consumers had a choice to go to, that may not necessarily be a monopoly. But it could become a monopoly if the various owners conspired to regulate prices. So it's free to play on PlayStation. It's free to play on Nintendo. Google charges a price. Apple charges a price. So there is no monopoly as to where people can play that game.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, you could show if there was a conspiracy, say, between those paid platforms, Google and Apple, for instance, if they were conspiring together to set and regulate the price of companies to come on and to access their operating systems so that the user could play the game on that conspiracy may actually be a monopoly. However, my understanding is the prices are different And unless Epic has some sort of secret document showing conversations that we're going to regulate the price, I don't think they're going to prevail in this matter. So my prediction is Epic will lose the court case, but there's always a but. And by the way, I did hear that in some of the pre-motions that Epic and Apple were having before the judge, that apparently the judge kind of got the Epic attorney to a point where he was not doing well, and I'm putting that incredibly politely. But again, that's what I've heard. I have no, firsthand knowledge. But I did say Epic, I think, is going to lose this battle. But there's always a but. That's the short game. What about the long game? DOJ and EU now have an interest in what's going on. In other words, Epic did highlight this. So could the Department of Justice get involved? Could the European Union get involved? So this is light that Google and Apple probably don't want to have shown upon them. They don't want this attention. I honestly don't think that Epic is going to win here. I think they have plenty of platforms. If they want to play on this particular platform, iOS, they're going to have to pay Apple to play. It's not like they're setting exorbitant prices that become so unreasonable. And also, we have to look at the fact that Apple is not just stagnant with its business. It's constantly growing, and they're using that money to grow. And yes, they're also earning that money to earn a profit. And again, I don't think that anything Apple's doing with regards to their Apple Store and their pricing scheme is causing a problem. Now, mind you, if everyone starts going over to Nintendo or, say, the Sony PlayStation or Google Android, and they're losing revenue because maybe their prices are too high, well, they may reduce the price. But right now, I don't see people going away. And quite honestly, I don't see the gamers of Fortnite saying, screw Apple, I'm not going to buy my iPhone, I'm not going to buy my iPad. I just don't think Epic's going to win here. But again, that's my personal opinion. And any thoughts or questions?
Yes.
And if I did,
because
please.
of course I always have thoughts about it.
I was waiting for your draft, so go, please.
Okay. So my first question relates to, here I'm starting off by saying, well, my first question. So the whole thing with collusion, unless we see documents that show up that say Apple and Google were
Right.
Were colluding, that argument is out the window. But what sort of defense is it to say, look, we're just charging industry standard prices? Because that's what it looks like to me. Not like Apple just went around and said, hey, let's all charge the same thing. They just started charging what everyone else is charging, and then later on added in the 15% tier for most app developers.
Well, who is everyone else that's charging? It's Google. And Google is the only one of the platforms that I understand is actually charging. There may be another one that's charging a very nominal fee, but Google and Apple are charging similar fees, but they're not charging the same fee. And unless there's been some sort of written agreement or written dialogue, or quite frankly, some sort of unwritten acknowledgement that you have to prove, I don't believe that anything they're doing is necessarily illegal, at least from that perspective.
All right. And now, I was under the impression that all of the other Android stores outside of Google, like Samsung, that they were charging similar rates. Now, of course, far be it from me to do all the research to verify that, because I've got a life.
Right.
So now, Do you
I'm
see?
gonna pause you there. Okay.
Okay.
Then if Samsung and all the other OSs are doing this literally the same thing, then Epic needs to bring that up in their case. Otherwise, they're going to lose.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point, because I've read somewhere, and this has been going on for so long now, I can't remember where I read everything, but I read that Epic was charging the same rates to the developers that were selling through their store, which made them seem a little disingenuous to me. So when
Epic was charging the other OS stores the same amount?
Right. Yeah. So like if you're a game maker selling through the Epic store, they were taking a 30% cut as well.
Oh, okay. You're talking about through the Epic store. Okay, I'm tracking. Well, that may be hypocritical, but it's not necessarily legal unless they're talking with other stores and setting the prices that wherever these games are going to, there's a set conspired price by all the Play stores, and that's not what I heard in your, if you will, hypothetical.
Okay.
So yes, it's hypocritical. It's hypocritical, and it really comes down to the fact that Epic wants to be able to keep more of the profit.
Of course.
They're a $1 billion company, and they're playing with $1 trillion companies, and they want to play with the big boys.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can't fault them for that, because they want to grow their business. It's just how you go about doing that will determine how successful you are. Yeah. Now, I've been hearing people armchair quarterback and speculate that what could come out of this is the court ordering Apple to open up their app store, essentially create an official way for people to sideload apps in, and asking you this, knowing full well that anything you say cannot be construed as
legal advice.
As legal advice. Do you think there's any possibility that would actually happen?
No, I don't think so. I really don't. I think because you have the ability to use other systems for your programs. And I think one of the niche things about Apple is the fact that it's sandbox. One of the niche things about Windows back in from the 90s to 95 and even the 2000s is that you could basically put whatever you want on it. So, it's like, say, selling Windows, well, now you have to sandbox things because Apple does. It's just a completely different system. If one train company uses coal engines and the other one uses some sort of electronic power, hydroelectronic power, there's just two different systems. You can't tell one system how to run its way and be compliant with the other way and vis-a-vis. Does that make sense?
I think it does.
And if I need to clarify, please let me know.
No, that makes sense. And now, I've been under the impression, once again, as someone that reads a lot but doesn't always have time to go and do a lot of verification, that when you get a game on Wii, the developers that made the game, they're going through Nintendo's own sandbox. So it's not like I could decide to make a game at Jeff's new game company, and I'm selling a game where you too can be an attorney. I can't just pop that onto your Wii. I have to go through the Nintendo sandbox.
Right.
So assuming that I'm interpreting that correctly, am I correct in assuming that this is actually really good for Apple's case? Because now they can say, look, this is just a thing that we all do, or at least some of us do. It's not like we're coming up with the whole sandbox thing to lock everyone out. Here's Nintendo. They're like us.
again, I don't see anything wrong with we being sandboxed as long as that the program developers have other platforms they can go to. And if they can put the same game or something similar on a PlayStation or an Xbox or even on the Apple, although Apple's not known for games, then there's no anti-competitive matter going on. I mean, if it were something that could only be played on Wii, which, quite frankly, even the Xbox and the PlayStation have joysticks that you can use, or the lightsaber or the paddles or whatever you want. I wouldn't be surprised if there's something for the Mac, and I'm sure there's something jerry-rigged for Windows. Because there are alternative platforms that people can take their program products to. I don't think you're going to find a monopoly unless you were to find a conspiracy amongst the different platforms to set and regulate prices.
Yeah. And as someone who has played an attorney on stage, but is not actually an attorney.
And you're not offering legal advice.
No legal advice.
No. As a matter of fact, I rarely offer advice in general. It's just better that way for me. When I look at what Apple had to deal with through that whole antitrust case with ebook pricing, and I mean, they got hammered hard with that. I cannot imagine that someone at Apple would say, it would be a good idea. Let's do it again.
I'm not saying that Apple's doing this, but here's the thing, and this is my personal view on litigation, okay? If you have the money for whatever reason, and you're basically being sued because you have the money, there are three tricks in litigation that a lot of people will use. I'm not saying it's right, I'm saying this is what the trick is. Delay, number one. And number two, delay. And then, of course, number three, delay. Because the longer you delay, the longer you get to hang on to your money. Period. And it's unfortunately it's part of capitalism today. A lot of the court systems are being abused by people who, quite frankly, were wrong and they quote unquote need to pay up. And unfortunately, they use the court systems to delay and exhaust the other party. But on a brighter note, hopefully you have another question for me.
I do. I have another question for you. Dave, you don't mind that I'm just sitting here firing off questions?
No, one last question here before we
Okay, fair enough.
We're going to move on because we're getting close to time here. So
okay. So my last question then. And this is about monopolies in general.
Okay.
So I understand that being a monopoly in and of itself does not necessarily constitute a violation of the Sherman Act, and doesn't necessarily create a situation in which the federal government needs to get involved. But is it safe to say that if you then take the power that you have amassed because you're a monopoly to intentionally push other companies out of the space or prevent them from coming in, that would be a clear case where the Sherman Act comes into effect?
I believe you're absolutely correct. And if you look up the Sherman Act, I believe that is part of the regulations that say if you're using your monopoly, your innocent monopoly, to stifle competition, to disrupt competition, then I believe the government then could intervene.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Dave, thanks for being so
I
just
thought this was
just roll with questions.
No, that's what I wanted to happen here. I think I know Michael was going to give us great insights on this Epic versus Apple topic, and it's definitely going to be interesting. I'm interested. I'm interested to see that you're kind of citing that you think Epic is going to lose this, but that's I'm of the one that's kind of leaned towards that as well. Just the way Epic has done what they've done with this, and the way they've been acting, and the way they've been doing the business, and they have to understand that Apple has an app store, and then in fact Apple was already starting to work with the developers and reducing their fees as well, moving it down to 15% depending on how much revenue they were generating. So I think Apple's being more than fair with this, and they're not trying to restrict people from being able to make some money. And that these developers are obviously being, in general, the developers of Apple apps have done very well. I mean, and you just look at the developer community. We look at WWDC every year, and how many developers? I mean, what 2 or 3 million developers are out there for developing iOS and Mac OS apps. So I think Epic has to understand that this is the market, and just because they think they're a big company, I just don't see why they think they can get away with pulling Fortnite, and all it's doing is harming them, because they're going to have less folks that don't want to play it anymore because it's not on a platform that people enjoy using, especially iOS. So, all right, so let's. I've got a couple more topics here before we wrap things up here. I mentioned earlier about I lost my point here. Sorry, that Apple finally clarified the use of two Apple IDs where you have your iCloud subscription, and if you have the Apple One bundle. We've talked about the Apple One bundle of quite a bit here over the last few months. When it was released, I subscribed to the Apple One Premier bundle, which I find to be of pretty good value, getting all the services that Apple has to offer right now. And it also includes iCloud storage. And I've been one to have two Apple IDs for many years. I honestly, at this point, I wish I could merge my Apple IDs because they're just not needed anymore. Back in the day, you had to do it because if you had one Apple ID and your wife or your spouse or whoever you're sharing an account with, you're getting all their texts, you're getting all their other contacts and your calendar entries, and that's what ended up happening. But now I'm stuck. And I've had my purchase Apple ID for 10 years, 15 years probably, when the iTunes store came out for the first time, the App Store came out for the first time. So I don't want to lose that. Nor do I want. I also have an iCloud account, which actually is a Mac.com account, which you don't get those anymore, and I don't want to lose that either. So I don't want to lose that either. So my Mac.com account was my iCloud account for storage. So I was putting it on there. At the time, I was paying it on there, and then the purchase account was doing all the apps and everything else. Now you can combine them and use the family sharing and put that on the family sharing plan, and then that I can have both IDs. So I have both IDs sitting on a family sharing plan with other family that's sharing our account. Well, now I just recently had the rest of my wife's family is now on my Apple One bundle share. So now they get access to Apple Music and News Plus and Fitness Plus and the iCloud storage, which I have 2 terabytes. So my point is, this was an article actually in Apple Insider, as well as there's a support article from Apple about this, talking about if you subscribe to an Apple One bundle and use a different Apple ID for cloud storage, iCloud storage. So you can basically, when you go in, you manage iCloud storage accounts within the iCloud, and it gives you the opportunity to be able to say, this is where my Apple iCloud storage is on this ID, and my purchase is on the other ID. So it keeps it separate, and it's been doing a pretty good job for the most part. And I set it up that way. The only thing I did make a mistake on is when I did add more family members and I opened up my purchase account, all of a sudden I was being charged for some of their subscriptions, which I did not obviously want to pay for. So you have to be careful there too. So I had to shut off. So those folks, those part of the family are not going to have access to my second Apple ID, because we know when we sign in to our Apple accounts, you have the purchase account you sign into, and then your iCloud account you sign into. So that's how at least Apple has made it somewhat easy to have the being able to sign into the App Store using just my purchase account. So, but the family plan, I've turned that off. So I prefer not to pay for those subscriptions, because they want, like the New York Times. I got billed in the New York Times. Like, wait a minute, I didn't subscribe to this, and that's what happened. So
you do now.
Yeah, not anymore. No, I turned it off. So, but I think this is good information to everybody to be aware of. Again, I understand Apple. Why can't you come up with a way of the murder accounts at this point? I just really don't want to lose all the. I mean, think about how many thousands of apps we've purchased. Me, especially over the years, and I don't want to have to go back and. I mean, I'm saying, granted, probably some of those apps probably don't exist anymore that are probably on that account, but. Why do I want to take a chance on that? So, but to go back to the iCloud, I know, Michael, you asked about that earlier as far as the costs go. If you were just to have an individual iCloud account, you start at the 50 gig plan for 99 cents a month, and then you go to the 200 gig plan, and then you go to the 2 terabyte plan. Well, $29.95, you're getting all those services across the board, and if you do the math, it is a pretty good value. You get News Plus and Fitness Plus and Apple Arcade, which actually Apple Arcade I've been actually kind of enjoying lately because they brought a lot of cool games like Oregon Trail and some of the old nostalgic games that are back, and so I think Apple is really starting to really generate some interest with that. Apple TV Plus, of course, is included in the bundle. Fitness Plus, which I need to use more, which I don't. I'm bad, but so. And the nice thing that's here is we've talked about it before as far as the bundles. You go, from the base price, I think it's like $15, you go to the $20, then you go to the $30, and then you just get the bundles. But the nice thing is I have a 2 terabyte plan, plus you could actually add another 2 terabytes if you wanted to, if you really needed to have some more storage. So they've really gotten generous with that because you never were able to do that before. So, but this was just a good article to review for those who do have the two IDs. But go ahead, Michael, you have some questions.
I want to go back a step on something, the part you were complaining about. I have, I'm pretty sure, 3 different Apple accounts, in particular with my iTunes. Yeah. And, to be honest, I mean, I think I can guess what the emails are. In other words, I'm guessing what the emails are because it was like 10, 12 years ago. Because for some reason I opened up 2 other ones. I couldn't tell you why. And I'm pretty sure I don't even have the passwords to those email accounts. And I just don't have like a day to sit on the phone with Apple to try to figure that all out. And you're right. I think it should be simple. And it's frustrating that it's not, because I'm sure I've got some old songs and movies and other media purchases that I've made. And I can't believe that Apple cannot straighten that out. It's just,
it blows my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, I found M4P files when they put the protection on the song, so you can't. Remember, you remember that back in those days?
Yep, I remember that.
You download the song and you were screwed if you didn't have played on anything other than an Apple device. I mean, that's so long ago. I mean, it's not a problem now. Obviously, they've opened it up so you can download them. But yeah, I mean, if I think about it, probably the purchase account that I have now, so many of the apps I've bought over the years, it'd be interesting to go back and see if I could look at an app I bought, 15 years ago, if it still exists. It probably doesn't, but it definitely would be interesting. So good information about this. And I definitely want to take a look at the links we have in the show notes. And we are a little over time, but I actually wanted to touch on a couple apps here real quick, if that's okay with you guys.
Absolutely.
The first one I want to talk about is Chrome OS, the Chrome iOS for iOS. It gained support for widgets finally. So now you can actually create a widget if you use Google Chrome for iOS on your iPhone. You now can put a widget in there and have a place to do a search through Google right there and right then and there through Chrome. So and it's really cool that you're able to set things up here right into the home screen. So I think that was a cool thing here that they've added. Then the last thing I wanted to touch on is there's another authenticator app I came across here. This was it's for 2-factor authentication, doing authentication. It's authenticator by a company called Too Stable, and it's available for both in the iOS store for iOS as well as on the Mac store. And we have a link to their website and showing some of the things that it can do and what it supports compared to what Microsoft Authenticator and Google Authenticator does. And it does a lot of stuff here. It does support Mac, whereas Google and Microsoft do not. That's one thing that stands out. And then, well, who cares about Android? But but it does support. You don't have to have an account, which is interesting. Where Microsoft you do, and widgets. It supports widgets, so you have the capability of widgets with two-factor authentication, and you can import everything from Google Authenticator if you wanted to bring that over. It's got a free version. I believe it only gives you I think 1 or 2 accounts. It's pretty limited, but it is a subscription service. What a surprise! $9.99 for a year to subscribe to it. So check it out. I think it was an interesting app I found this week with Authenticator. So any comments on that at all?
Are you in a position where you can say how it compares to Authy? Because that's been my authenticator app of choice for years.
Yeah, we should take a look at that. I just downloaded this Authenticator the other day and just had a lot of time to take a look at it. But I bet Authy has got some powerful things too. Of course, they're not comparing that; they're comparing the big boys, mm-hmm. and no surprise there as far as that goes. So, but we'll definitely. I think we should bring that on another topic here. Look at Authy. That's Authy.
Authy.
Authy with a Y. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's check that out, and we'll do that on another show. We'll do a comparison. So, but yes, we are way over time here. But this was some absolutely awesome conversation. I really appreciate both of you and the dialogue, especially getting some good insights about the Epic and Apple battle that is going on here. So let's go ahead and wrap things up for this week. That's a wrap for this week. Please send your comments, questions, and suggestions to our email address, feedback@intouchwithios.com. You can follow us on Twitter @intouchwithios. You can subscribe in your favorite podcatcher, including Pocket Casts. I always say Apple Podcasts, but use Pocket Casts. It's so much better. And many others. But better yet, just go to our website @intouchwithios.com, where all the links to all the ways to listen to us are there. I'm Dave Ginsburg, and you can find me on Twitter @DaveG65. And Michael Eisenberg, thank you so much for being here. Please let everybody know where they can find you.
They can find me at thetechsavvylawyer.page. There you can listen to my podcast, the TechSavvyLawyer.page podcast. That comes out about every 2 weeks. And of course, you can reach me at michaeldj@TechSavvyLawyer.page.
Great. Thanks so much for being here, Michael. I really appreciate it. And Jeff, as always, I thank you for always being here, and thanks for coming in at the last minute. We really appreciate it, and tell everybody where they can find you.
Well, thanks again for inviting me, because it's always just so much fun.
Yeah.
And people can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I am Gamet in both places, and you can find me at youtube.com/jgamet. I'm putting out some videos there. As a matter of fact, as soon as we are done here, I need to make the title slide for a new video, so that will be up in just a few minutes too.
All right, we're going to put that link in the show notes for your YouTube channel. I'm excited for you. That's going to be you putting some great content out there. Really appreciate it.
I hope people like it.
And I think you're getting some good feedback. So
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, everybody. Thanks again for listening. I hope you really enjoyed the show. This was some great lively conversation this week, and we'll talk again soon.